I'm going to resume recording. There we go. So aloha, everybody. Officially starting our workshop today. My name is Amanda Kaahanui, and I'm with SPIN. And my colleague here, Susan Rocco.
I'm Susan Rocco. I'm Jason's mom. He's an old man of almost 42, and I started at SPIN when he was a 4-year-old.
And we're both parents of kids with disabilities working here within the Department of Health. And our funding comes from the Department of Education. So we have an annual contract every year with IDEA funds. And our kuleana is to provide resources and information to families and professionals, helping to navigate through the educational system and through the whole disability system. Sometimes folks call and say, how do I get DD services? We're going to help them to connect. We also have a conference every year, and we're super excited. We're back in person in April on the 22nd, and we invite all of you to come and join us. It's a great day of learning and partnership together. The picture that you see on the screen is our SPIN awardees. So we have SPIN awards for Parent of the Year, Professional of the Year, and Parent Choice of the Year. So if you know somebody, a parent or a professional or a teacher or an aide, someone who's doing good work in the community or even at that systems level, consider please going over to our SPIN conference website. You can download a nomination form, and let's make their day and call them out for all the good things that they're doing. You can see that we do a lot of different things. Of course, we have the conference. We answer the phones a lot. We do a lot of emails back and forth. We have newsletters that come out quarterly. We send out e-blasts, so things that are happening in the community, it comes to us, and then we share it out to make sure folks know about them, and teachers are also welcome to sign up for those. And then we also sit as a parent perspective on different boards. SEAC is the Special Education Advisory Council that Susan and I help as staff. So we're setting up the meetings, Susan's taking the notes, we're helping to facilitate that meeting. But we also sit on other boards and commissions or work groups. Susan is on the Evidence-Based Services Committee as a parent perspective. I sit on the Post-Secondary Support Group, work group as parent perspective. And so we're just helping to provide that, because we hear from a lot of parents. So it's not only our own experience, but just a general parent experience. Sometimes that can be very helpful. So that's a little bit about us and what we do. And Susan will be dropping links in the chat today. So again, reminding you, we want to know who's here today. If you can, just drop in the chat your name, if you're what your position is, if you're a teacher, if you're a parent, if you're an admin person, and what school you're with. That's going to count as your sign in for today, and it helps us to kind of see who's here. Cicely said she's been getting our newsletters for many years. Thanks, Cicely. We appreciate that. And when I started with my kiddo, we got the paper ones, right? And now we've moved on to electronic, so easy to share with families. So if you'd like to sign up, we'll have information at the end that you can do that. Okay. So before we get going, we want to thank our SPED teachers and folks that work with our special education students. We know that it's a hard job, but we are rooting for you, because if you do well, our kids do well. So we want you to be successful, and we want to create successful partnerships, because when teachers and parents are working together, we know that the outcomes are fantastic. And if we go too fast on something, please know that these slides are available to you. You can download them from the SCED app, or you can reach out to us and we can get you a PDF copy as well. Okay, Miss Susan.
So before we begin with our content, we want to acknowledge that many of you are in total sync with what Amanda and I are going to say today. And even if we're not, that's okay, because we're coming from different perspectives. We're also going to be presenting information about kids who are not fully included, although we know there are a number of you inclusion teachers in the chat, and we just love that you're here with us in the room. So don't assume that we don't value you and where you are. We're covering all bases today in case this is learning material for some folks that are in the room. And the first thing we want to talk about is the difference, the evolution basically of how we partner with families. Is it in the very beginning, and like I said, I've been in this seat for over 30 years, that there was a policy in the department about parent involvement. And it was quite limited in the sense that it was all about getting families to attend activities that you planned for them, getting families to conform with what you wanted them to do for their child. But there wasn't a lot of give and take about it. And there was a lot of judgment if families didn't come to those events. Now, we're not saying it's not important to have open house night, volunteers in the classroom being a part of the PTSA. But if families don't participate at that level, there may be a good reason. So what we want to do is find other ways to include them. Next slide. Family engagement, you've probably been exposed to a lot lately because there is a Board of Ed policy about it. In fact, the policy goes beyond engagement to partnership. And a lot of you have been exposed to Karen Mapp's model of how you get families to help with their child's academic success and how they make progress. And a lot of that would be having a parent come in and talk about their family or their child's disability, encouraging families to join the student council for the school community council. But there's still just a little bit left to partnership that we want to go for, and that would be family school partnerships, as we mentioned. In that board policy that we referred to, and we're going to show you in just a moment, there was a conscious effort by family advocates to get the board to include these 6 standards from the National Parent and Teacher Association board. And these have been around for at least a decade or two. And if you can utilize them, and they actually have a matrix on their website that shows when you're excelling or you're just barely getting there, and the differences in between, you are really partnering with families, and that's our ultimate goal. Next slide. And here's that policy that we refer to. Now, the policy itself has more verbiage in it, but we've pulled out the pieces about the 6 standards under the PTA, I should say. The first standard being welcoming all families, the second being communicating effectively, and that's 2-way communication. The third is supporting student success. Next slide. Next slide, Amanda.
Oh, so sorry. Did we hit this is 4, 5, and 6, yeah?
Okay, there we go. Speaking up for every child, sharing power, which is the one that we dearly love, and collaborating with the community. And up to you, Amanda.
Okay, so first, before we get into those and talking about partnerships and coming up with some strategies and tips about it, we first wanted to do a little bit about biases and filters and perspectives, because we all have them. And I love this little graphic here because we're all sort of in this PC mode of saying, how do you want to be called? Handicapped or disabled or physically challenged? And the kids is like, Joe, I want to be called Joe, right? Because really at the end of the day, past all the labels, the kid is just a kid, and families are families. And we're trying to get a little bit past some of those biases that we might have. Now, we all have implicit bias. It's something that's unconscious. It's maybe how we were raised, or it could be part of our experiences. And I love this little quote here, that biases are the stories we make up about people before we know who they actually are. And it's made up of community stuff we hear on the news. It's again our own experiences, and we think about people in a certain way before we've actually gotten a chance to know them. Okay, here we go. And these are the different kinds of biases. And I pulled this from this website down here, and you can see there's a whole big list of them, but look what they forgot. They forgot about disability bias. And we see disability bias in lots of different ways. I recently saw an article on the news, a local news, about a young man who is blind, and he had gone through public school and was told he could do anything he wanted to do. Of course we tell our kids, you can do anything, just put your mind to it. And so he did. He wanted to be a teacher. He went to Chaminade, he graduated, and then he came out and he went back to the department and he said, I'm ready to teach. I want to be a middle school English teacher. Like, wow, that in itself is amazing to want to teach middle school. I was always like elementary age myself, like those kiddos. but more power to him. But he couldn't get a job because he was blind. And the assumption and the bias was you couldn't have good classroom management. So instead of thinking about ways to get around that or to support him there, it was just, no, we cannot hire you. And he recently got hired, that was the news story, as a music teacher, which is awesome, but he has given up his dream of being an English middle school teacher because he was blind and there was disability bias. So we see biases come up in a variety of ways. So here's a few more. Yep, go ahead.
Before you move on, we have to give Alyssa a shout out because she said he was her student.
Yay!
And so you built that foundation for him. Thank you so much.
Thank you. He's an amazing young man. I got to meet him at a transition meeting a couple of years ago. He was a wonderful young man. We're super excited that he's working. We just hope that he gets a chance to follow that dream. But thank you for supporting him and building those dreams up for him. We really want to see that for all of our kids. Yes. Okay, so here's some examples of bias, and you can think of more. I just pulled a few. But affinity bias is when we like somebody because they have something in common with us, right? So, oh, you want Kamehameha? Me too, we sisters, right? We're besties, instant. But if you went to the school on the mainland, it might be like, I don't even know how to connect with you because we have very different experiences growing up. And that's just a bias that we have. It might be unconscious, but it can be there and be preventative. A halo bias is when somebody has a good thing about them, and then we think everything is good about them. So that kid, he smiles all the time. He must be so happy. But what we may not see is that he could have something muscular where he's grimacing, he's not really smiling, or he smiles because he's happy, but then, when he gets home, he's having these blow-ups because he's tried so hard during the day to be happy. So we assume, and we have this bias. The horn bias is the opposite, that if they do one bad thing, then everything they do must be bad. So if they say, oh, she is terrible at math, she must be terrible at everything and has to be in resource or FSC all day. If it's conformity bias, this is where we get into not knowing the person, but based on what the community might think or what I've seen on the news or my own experiences. But it's usually how we think of as a community of things. So how many of you, when you saw Rain Man all those years ago, thought that's what autism is? And when you came into the field of special ed, still having that thought about what autism is based on what you saw in a movie. Lots of people thought that. And then also a similarity bias is when we are together, like, so, hey, all of us girls got to stick together, right? Or if I had one bad experience with a principal, then my bias is all those principals are bad. And that is not the case. But it's that internal thinking and thought processes that we have that can affect how we want to partner with people, not even realizing that it might get in the way. Bias also can affect how we share information out to families. We can make an assumption that they only need this information because that's what I think is important, but really we want to share with families all of the different opportunities for information. And bias comes towards parents, especially from school staff, medical staff, other parents, other students, family members. We all have some kind of a bias. So my kid is deaf. One of his things is he's deaf. And so we heard a lot, like he should sign, he should talk, especially when we see kids with cochlear implants. Oh, they should be talking, not signing. Well, who said? That's a bias. They should be using hearing aids. They should not be using hearing aids. They should go to this school. They should go to that school. But instead, we should be giving families information across the spectrum. Right? So language, communication, technology, school placement, we should be giving families like, here's the continuum. And then based on your family's experience or this kid's needs, let's find something that fits. And also recognizing we change our mind sometimes. And that the standard for all of these is that we should be connecting families to resources, we should connect them to support organizations, and we should connect them to other families. Even if I met a family whose child was not deaf, I can still relate to them because we're on the same path of student success for our kid. We still want the same things, even if we have differences in our kids' disabilities. And so the same can go for all of these. Okay, so on our standard number, so that's a little bit about bias. And so as we're going through our presentation today, sometimes we look through that filter of bias and how it might affect our abilities to partner with families. So when we get to standard number 1, welcoming families into the school. There we go. Where's my thing? That's me. Okay. Checking my notes. That we want to make sure that we are welcoming all families into the school. And oftentimes SPED families feel disengaged and not included in that school welcome because our kids are down at the end of the hall or they're in that building over there. And we just don't feel a part of that school community. So when we're talking about school community inclusion and including families, including students, we cannot partner if we're not together and included in the same place. So starting with your front office, how welcoming is the front desk? And when we did this presentation in person on Tuesday, some people in the audience chuckled because they're like, oh yeah, our front desk maybe not so welcoming to families. I've gone to present at a school and waited for someone to acknowledge me while they were very busy. And I know folks are busy, but that first impression at that front desk and that front office can be very important in how the family feels welcomed into that school community. If you're having an open house night, is the SPED room open for you to go and see the kids work? Is the Gen Ed room open? Now, if my kid is in SPED, maybe they're in FSC, maybe they're in resource and they're in 2nd grade, I still want to go and see what the 2nd graders are doing, even if they weren't in that class, because I want to see where my kid stands maybe against what they're doing or what their work looks like. Hey, can we do something like that? I can come back to the teacher and say, that's a cool activity. Maybe our kids can do it. So just making the whole school open house and welcoming to everybody. Do SPED kids get flyers for School Spirit Week or other things? I remember taking my kid to school and dropping him off and seeing all the kids in PJs. And he's going, why are they wearing PJs? Oh, it happened to be School Spirit Week and it was pajama day. But we didn't get the memo. Now, there might have been a flyer in the backpack that got lost in translation. There might have been something posted on the website that I didn't look at. So trying to figure out how we're including our SPED families. And also the twinsies, this is my own little issue, but the twins day, dress up like your favorite, but your best friend and you wear the same clothes. Well, unless you are pairing our kids with disabilities with somebody, they probably don't have that bestie in order to pair and wear clothes with. So think about then putting kids with disabilities on these committees that the leadership, right? Usually the kids leadership that's putting these together, but put a kid with a disability on there because they might have something really helpful to share. If the school community or the PTA is putting something together, make sure that you're inviting SPED families to be there so that they can add their input and feel welcomed. If your school has a store, are kids with disabilities working in it? Do they get a chance to buy from it? Because when we talk about school community, we talk about community-based instruction, your school is your community. That's the community where the kids are learning and growing every day. So think about how your school becomes that community for the kids to be learning at. Are your SPED kids invited to prom or football games or school assembly? Now, we know that often they're going to the school assemblies, right? But they're often going with their little class and there's their little bubble inside of the big assembly there. So instead, are they sitting with their class, with their gen ed peers, or are they sitting by themselves? Are they welcomed? Do they feel welcomed? You may see like, oh yeah, they're all welcome, but did they get an invitation? Did they get a personal, sometimes invitation to let them know that they're welcome to come, right? If you have transition nights at your school, are you including special education teachers? Are you talking about your SPED programs? I went from the elementary school to the middle school transition night, and it was an inclusive middle school. And I asked a question about SPED, and there was no teacher there to answer my question. Now, the honors program was there, the AP program was there, the AVID program was there, but not the SPED program. So imagine that as a SPED mom, how I felt like I'm not even a part of this community because I didn't even start with the transition night. Do SPED families volunteer at your school? Does the PCNC, that's the Parent Community Network Coordinator, Are they connected to your SPED families? Oftentimes they get maybe a list of families who might be interested in volunteering, cutting things up, making copies, gluing stuff, prep for classes. But we often don't think about our SPED families to be able to be a volunteer or be helpful to them. Are they coming on field trips? I remember getting invited to a field trip as a chaperone, but then they left the aide at the school and I became the aide for my kid on the field trip, whereas I just wanted to be a parent chaperone. I wanted the 4 or 5 kids to walk through the zoo with in my little group, right? So there was an assumption that if I was going, that I was only going to be with my kiddo, but I actually just wanted to be a parent tapped for a field trip, like a lot of families do. If you have a PTA, how many SPED families are on your PTA? Because if we are not getting access to the academics of school or other pieces of school, I'm not going to fundraise for you. I'm not going to do stuff. I'm not going to come to your meetings because I'm not a part of it. My kid's not a part of it. So thinking about how we invite SPED families onto the PTSAs and also our school community councils for academic planning, if they're not part of those pieces of your school, then they're not connected and they're not going to partner with you because they feel really left out. So here's great ways to get families involved. I'm on our school community council. My son graduated last year, whoop, whoop. And I was on the school community council as a SPED parent, so I got to lend my SPED voice. And this year I got invited back as a community partner. So I'm still on the SSC, still able to kind of share some of those concerns that we have sometimes for SPED families, and also just a family whose kid attends or attended that school. And then if you can think of other ways that we can include families at schools, go ahead and drop them in the chat for us. Share some ideas. If I know I've missed things here, this is not the all-inclusive list, but when we think about including, again, including our kids, including our families, this is sort of that first step of partnering. Because if I don't have a seat at the table, then we can't even begin to work together. All right, now how many of you remember this inclusion graphic? You've probably seen it lots of times, right? Exclusion, segregation, integration. This is what a lot of assemblies look like with our kids in a bubble sitting in their resource class or their FSC class. This is sometimes what happens is segregation when we come to the math night, right? It's the doing two. You sit over here and do these activities. But what we really want to get to is this inclusion of working together, having input. So if oops, I'm so sorry. If I think about that inclusion graphic, where'd it go? There it is. And apply a family, school, community inclusion to that. Down here where we had exclusion, this is that we know best. We'll ask you if we need you. We're the professionals. We can do this, right? But what we want to get is up to here. So involvement is that segregation piece, right? We read the newsletter, get information from the website, and then stay in your lane. Engagement, come to the PTSA, come to the SSC meetings, come to the math nights, come to open house. We're engaging with you a little bit more, but we want to get up here to partnership. This is where we have our shared vision. This is where we're asking for feedback and getting information back and using that information. This is where we're using families as experts. Here, Susan and I, we're parents, right? But here we are presenting to you about family school partnerships. We can be experts in a field, even though we are parents. So think about how you use your families. We had a SCC meeting at the school, which we always had really low enrollment, right? Principals talking about academic plan. And like, oh, it's just so stimulating talking about the academic plan. We had a hard time getting families. So what he did is he said, well, we're going to get a guest speaker. And we said, well, how about do we have a parent that we could use as a guest speaker? And sure enough, we had a parent who worked in behavioral health in the private sector and was able to come to the school. And we had a presentation before the SSC meeting about brain development in adolescence. This was at the high school. And we had like 50 or 60 families come to the meeting because they were interested in learning about brain health. And what really connected them was that this wasn't just another professional within the DOE, this was a parent. that was working in the field. This was an expert in the field using. So just think about how you can use and partner with your families. They want to come to the school. They want to share their experience with you and their expertise with you. Sometimes we just don't get that open door. Okay. Communicating effectively. That's me again. Okay. So our standard number 2 is communicating effectively. And I love this quote down here, right? The single biggest problem in communication is that the illusion that it took place to begin with. And so I sent the flyer home, Amanda, about School Spirit Week. I didn't get it. So there's an expectation that I knew about it, but it didn't happen. Or I sent something in the communication log to the teacher, and I'm thinking that they got it, but they didn't have a chance to read it, or my kid ripped the page out, right? And they didn't see it at all. So when we think about communication and how we like to be communicated, do you like to be communicated through one way, linear, authoritative, it's limited, or do you prefer two-way, interactive, where you feel like you're an equal partner in the conversation, that I give feedback and it gets accepted and utilized? So I think that's how most of us want to be communicated with. And when we think about schools and how they might communicate with families, there's lots of ways that communication does go out. We've got websites and calendars and newsletters, but that's passive communication. You put the information out, and you as a teacher may have done a beautiful newsletter, and you put it in the backpacks of all the kids personally, and it goes, and it might have got crumpled. It might got eaten by the dog. It might not even have been opened over the weekend. Sometimes we don't even open the backpacks over the weekend. Maybe it's just too busy that week. So we feel like we've communicated something, but it just didn't get to the family. I have struggled sometimes with websites. Like I've tried to find information and I can't find it. I have to call the school, and I've gotten like, click here and then click over there, and now you can see where it is. And they're a little frustrated with me, but I don't know how your website's all laid out, and I had trouble finding it. That's why I called, right? When we look at direct one-way communication, these are our informational readings. These are our back to school nights, our curriculum nights, where we're telling, here, do this, or here, do that, but it's not two-way communication. I'm not getting an opportunity to say, oh, this was hard for us, or I don't understand how to do that piece of it. So that's great direct one-way communication. Two-way communication, we can start to get into phone, calling the family, texting them. I used to text with a couple of my teachers a lot. That was really helpful. And also emails, just to kind of go back and forth and talk story with one another. Apps like Remind were helpful to me. Also keeping up, especially when he got into high school, like keeping up with some of the work teachers used the Remind app. And that was helpful to me to be a part of that learning experience. And then parent-teacher conferences are great two-way communication, but it's tiny, right? We have like 10 minutes in order to communicate. And really often it's the teachers like, I have so much to tell you, that there isn't often an opportunity then for the family to go, I have so much to tell you, because how do you share and really have good sharing in just 10 minutes time? So this is often how schools communicate. It's not bad, it's just different. And we want to be thinking about other ways that we could communicate with families. Now, some barriers then to that communication are work schedules, right? I could never attend the principal's coffee talk at 9 o'clock on Tuesday because I have to work full time. So my work schedule became a barrier in communicating and partnering with my school. Sometimes it's immigration or language and culture. Sometimes it's past experiences with teachers or schools, or your own personal experience. So unless you are the kid's preschool teacher, first year preschool teacher, there have been others before you, and they may not have been very good relationships for various reasons. And the same with teachers. You may have had a really horrible to deal with parent, and that will put a bad taste in your mouth when trying to partner or deal with parents coming down the line. We have it on both sides. There again comes some of our bias. We may recognize it, and sometimes we don't recognize it. Technology, we all saw the barriers with technology and COVID. Sometimes there's health issues that prevent a family from engaging or doing something with the school or partnering. Sometimes, excuse me, the parent has their own disability that they are working through, and they don't always want to self-disclose what that disability is. because that's a very personal thing. Transportation, if you've got a family and dad has to use the car to get to work, mom's not going to be able to come to some event or meeting because she just can't get there. Sometimes there's shared complicated custody. You don't know if parents are splitting up or somebody's traveling or something is happening. There's a lot of things going on in our kids' lives, and sometimes it comes off as bad behavior or not engaging, and they could just be really overwhelmed with home stuff at the moment. Sometimes there's childcare issues if mom's got other kids and she can't get to a meeting or an event at school. And right now, everything still is lived through a COVID filter, right? We are still dealing with food insecurity, job insecurity, and COVID is still out there. My friend just got it this past week. So we know that people are still getting it, people are still worried about it. All right, Miss Susan is going to talk to you about universal design for learning for communication.
Thank you.
Oh, Susan, I'm so sorry. I clicked on mute for you instead of mute for me.
No worries. Can you folks hear me now? Yes. I was just saying that we're reinforcing the message. And this is an infographic that might be helpful to you. We put it in the chat. And we put it together after learning about universal design for learning, which is an excellent concept for all schools. And sadly, we're working in old schools that don't have all the technology needed to make it possible, or don't have all the supports that would be helpful in making it universal. Thank you. So what we're just suggesting to you is you take those three components of UDL for teaching, for learning, and you apply them to your relationship with families. So the first piece of it, as you know, is how do you give information to the families? How do you communicate? And Amanda's gone through some examples. We just want to point out that no one technique is going to work for all your families. So the more that you can provide varied access to information, the more likely you're going to reach the family. Sometimes it's a video, sometimes it's a newsletter, sometimes it's a phone call. It could be a variety of things, but don't just offer one option, because then you'll have less families that can access it. Likewise, if you want to hear back from the family, and what we're really promoting is two-way communication, so that the family can suggest things to you, you can receive information from them, as well as the other way around. And in order to do that, you need to accept information in a variety of ways. And it might be through a parent spokesperson. A lot of what Amanda and I do is just reframe and repeat what all our parent callers are saying. It's not all our original, none of us are original thinkers, but we often have universal experiences. And you might find somebody who is a parent leader at your school who can communicate not only their personal ideas, but ideas of other families that they've talked with. And finally, the last column is about motivation. And we've already said more than once that we are overly sensitive as family members. And so we want to hear from you that you value us, that you encourage us, that it's all a positive message, because just one bad message can put parents off for a while. But we know you know these things, we're just reinforcing that.
Yes, thank you, Susan. And if you've got ideas or examples of how you use UDL, not necessarily for communication, but just universal design for learning, we love to hear about those examples too, because we like to share them with other teachers who are like, what is UDL? And then we can say, here's some examples that we've heard from the field, because not everybody has had exposure to it. All right, let's see. So let's talk about a few effective communication strategies for families. Is using like an introduction letter to families, and it could be a mail, it could be a video, it could be in person, that you have a little coffee talk or something, but it's a way to share yourself. And I've seen introduction letters of, hi, my name is Amanda and I went to school here, and I'm so excited about teaching your kid. That's great, but it doesn't tell me about you as a person. And during COVID, when we were all learning online, one of the things that kids really loved was seeing the little kitty cat walk across the laptop and they'd laugh, right? Or the doggy in the background, because now I can relate. I have a doggy too. What's your doggy's name? Or as a parent, if I saw teachers, bouncing a toddler on their lap, or, having another kid trying to do something or asking them a question, I appreciated that. Some teachers felt embarrassed. I'm so sorry. Like they had to kind of be on this pedestal, but you don't. You just have to be a person that I can relate to. And I can relate to a working mom, juggling a kid on the knee and then also trying to run a Zoom meeting. So introduce yourself to families, let them know about your hobbies and what you like to do. And if you have a family or pets, because that personalizes you and it helps me find connections. So I'm a scrappy person. I love to craft. And if you love to craft, now we have something in common that we can talk about and maybe come together to create an activity together. So introducing yourself can be really important in how we do it. Also asking families how they want to be communicated with. We think about that newsletter, right? Maybe I didn't get it. Maybe I have a hard time reading. Maybe I have my own reading disability, and that's hard. Maybe I need that information in a text. Maybe I need it in a Zoom, like a quick, here's this week's assignments for this week, and it's a quick Zoom stuff. So think about how families want to be communicated. Ask them, excuse me, how they would like to be communicated with. Of course, we're fostering trust and confidentiality with our families. That's always like the basis of effective communication. And if you're going to ask them questions, please do listen to the answers that you get. Don't assume you know what the answer is, but really actively listen to those answers. And we want you to think about starting conversations with families by acknowledging that you want them as your partner. It's a very different start of a relationship if you're, hi, I'm Amanda and I'm Ikaika's teacher and we're going to have a great year together, versus, hi, I'm Amanda, I'm Ikaika's teacher and I'm so excited to partner with you in teaching Ikaika this year. It's a very different feel when we're encouraging them to be partners and letting them know that I'm in this partner mindset. Of course, we want to have consistency and good follow through, and then to be really clear in what we're asking for families, what we're looking for in solutions, and to ask for ideas before you make a plan with families. Because sometimes we've got great ideas, but we don't know maybe that has been tried before. So if families, and they might just shut you down quickly, and which can be very hurtful. Like, I'm not going to offer anything because they shut me down. Maybe they shut you down because they've tried that 5 times before. So instead, we flip that around and say, okay, you tried this before. Let's work together to tweak it, to change it, to think about something different. Instead of building a new wheel, we're just creating new spokes on the wheel. So some tips and tricks for communication is to put yourself in the family's shoes. If the child is newly diagnosed, that is a rough time for families. So if you're an early family or even an older family, kids can get diagnosed later. It's a really challenging time. We have lost often our dreams, our original dreams for our kids, and we're having to build new ones. It can just be really hard. And we often are not open to listening to things at that time because we're struggling with our own grief and stress. There sometimes can be years of frustration in the past, working with the schools or with teachers or with admin or whatever that might look like, and it comes across as being standoffish or frustrated. It's probably not against you. It might just be railing against the system or just the circumstances. Again, COVID is still a filter that we're all working ourselves through, and so sometimes that could be a problem or an issue that the families are dealing with. And then asking families to fill out that questionnaire about the child, right? If you see that every time we are getting ready to move from this activity to recess time, and then little Johnny runs under the desks and hides, why is that happening? Talk to the family. And they might say, oh, you know what? He needs a 3-minute transition with a little bell or a little something, just to know that this activity is ending and they're moving on to the next one. It could be something so simple that could really help your day and help the kids' day as well. Our next one here is when you're sharing information, to be really clear in your messaging. dates and times and deadlines and expectations. This little excerpt here is from a parent group that I was involved with. My kid is deaf and we were doing this great workshop, but they required every Friday that parents get on and meet together. But look at here, it says, if you can't make it, you have to let us know the night before. How realistic is that for families that have kids? I mean, think about your own family and kids, and you've got something going on the next day, and maybe in the morning the kid wakes up throwing up, or the dog needs to go somewhere, or the car is broken down, or it's just freaking Friday night and then I'm tired and I can't put any more on my plate. I'm not going to be able to tell you that the night before. So that expectation of, you must come and you have to tell us the night before, it just really puts families off. It doesn't feel like you're wanting me to partner with you. It feels like you're just kind of dictating. And then this one about electives and labs, I stuck in there just because they had said it's mandatory. So like you're shouting, right? It's all in caps and bolded. But when I asked them for the list, because they didn't include it, they said, oh, it's not really, they're not mandatory. I said, but it said it's mandatory. Oh, but they're not. So when I finally did get the list, it was just a list of classes. There was no dates, no times, no teacher information, no age range, because these were kids from like birth to 18. There was no description of the class. So how am I making an informed decision with no real information? So just think about how we're messaging out to families. And then this last one here says, use the I statements. So look at our two statements, right? I noticed Ikaika didn't turn his assignment in on time. Does he need more time to do that? Is a very different expression than why didn't Ikaika turn in his assignment? It's late. That second one is, I feel as a parent, I'm being blamed. I've done something wrong that he didn't turn his assignment in, right? I didn't make him do it. Versus, I noticed he didn't turn his assignment in. Does he need more time? Is also asking, is there something going on? And I might say like, oh my gosh, yes, we were so overwhelmed. Or, oh my gosh, yes, there was something that happened. Or, oh my gosh, yes, I totally forgot about the assignment. We are going to get it done this weekend and we'll get it turned into you. It's very different than why didn't he do it? Because nobody likes to have that kind of finger pointed at them. Okay, Miss Susan?
Let's see, here we go. So we mentioned SEAC in a link that we gave you earlier as a source for infographics. We want to be sure you understand what SEAC stands for, and we don't want to assume. It stands for the Special Education Advisory Council. It is a body that's required in IDEA, and it's meant as a semi-independent body that can advise the department about the unmet needs of kids with disabilities. And Amanda and I both have the good fortune of being the staff support to SEAC. So we help organize the meetings, we write testimonies for them, etc. And they realized a while ago, as did SPIN, that infographics are really an ideal way to communicate information. And it is very helpful for families because it takes complex information, it breaks it into pieces, and it also draws the eye to the information and it makes it more memorable. So speaking of communication, we had a subgroup of SEAC members, one of whom worked for child and adolescent mental health, several family members. It was a teacher, special ed teacher. They came up with this wonderful infographic called See How We Partner Together, meaning the C's are the 5 components of communication. Communication, consideration, collaboration, creativity, and confidence. They all lead to partnership. And this is available on that SEAC website. I just posted their link in the website. Just click on the infographic page. But it's a reminder. And the wonderful thing about this infographic is both sides have the same responsibility. It's just worded slightly different, but it gives you a sense that we're all working towards the same thing. So Amanda, you're going to go into pet peeves now. Yeah,
I am. Thank you. Thank you for that gentle reminder that I was on mute. I'm in the office, so I try to mute in between because I know there might be stuff going on. Okay, we have got about 45 people here. So what we're going to do is a quick activity in a breakout room. And I should have done that while Susan was chatting. How many people? 45. So that's about 20 2:23. Okay, there we go. So we are going to get a chance to blow off a little steam, and we're going to pair you off into groups in a breakout room for about 2 minutes. 1 minute will be player A. So whoever gets in there first can be player A. And so, but that doesn't mean you delay in getting in, okay? And you're gonna spout off about something. My sample here is traffic, right? Because we all get frustrated with traffic. And player B is gonna listen very carefully and try and cut through the noise of that rant and single out what that player or what player A really cares about. So if they're frustrated about traffic, what do they care about? They care about a smoother drive to work or home. What do they value? They value more time with their family because they feel their time is wasted or at work. What matters to them? And what matters to me is being with my family safely at the end of the day. So I may have this big rant out, traffic. But really, if you're listening to me intently, asking yourself, what does Amanda care about? What does she value? What matters can help. And this can help us in a lot of our communication with our families. So I am going to put you into breakout rooms. Player A is going to start. I've got 60 seconds on the clock here for myself. I will broadcast when it's time to then listen. And then when I close the rooms, finish up your conversations and come back. Come back to this room, please. Don't leave the meeting altogether, okay? Because we still have stuff we want to share with you. So I'm going to go ahead and create and open those rooms. You'll see a link in front of you and go ahead and join them. You have 60 seconds to vent on anything you want as long as it's work appropriate, and go. I love that they're going. They're going. Go ahead. Click on your link. Should put you in a room.
I'll let you do your broadcasting and then I'll give you a little message, Amanda.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just moving a couple folks that were kind of sitting
Emily
in a
and
room.
Becky.
Or folks were sitting in a room by themselves.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. So I wanted to put them in a room that had other people. Okay.
So Becky said she went to a room and it was empty. So maybe you can reassign her.
I can. Let's see. Where are you, Becky? There you are. Let's put you. Oh, I don't have the ability. Oh, there she is. Okay. Put you in room 4. Hi, Ramona. Okay, it is 1 minute, 1 minute. So go ahead and now let's have player B share out what they care about, what they value, what matters. Go. Okay, Susan, go ahead.
Well, we still have 4 members in the big room with us, but I don't know whether it's too late to add them. What do you think?
Probably. Ramona, did you not have somebody in your room, hon?
Can't hear you, hon. Are you muted?
Oh, okay. I had trouble with my mic, so it kicked me out. And then, yeah, so.
Okay, that's okay. It's just a short little game to think about how when folks are ranting, sometimes, especially parents are ranting, trying to get to the heart of what their meaning is, and we'll review that in a little bit here. But thanks for staying with us and coming back into the main room. Really
so
Amanda,
Cecily is a mama and she might enjoy hearing the rant if the room she went into was empty.
Oh, it was. I'm so sorry. You stand with us, Cecily. We have lots of rants. We can do it. Okay, I'm gonna close the room. That's one of the great things with Susan and I. We have a lot of trust with each other. We know that we can vent and rant sometimes, and sometimes we just need to let it out. sometimes we need a solution, but sometimes we just need to have somebody to listen. So we're going to bring people back in.
And that's a strategy for any of us, is find a partner and let it out so that you can be polite when you get together in a group. Right?
Oh.
And also, if you vent to somebody, it's a chance for you to hear yourself think. So it's a good thing. But Amanda, I was just going to say, because we have more participants and a little bit more input, we might want to shave one comment off each slide just to make sure we get.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. And we're 10 to 11:40. Okay.
40.
Watching my time. Yep. Thank you. All right. So everybody's back. Looks like everybody's back. Excellente. So thank you. And I know sometimes Zoom is hard to do it. And I appreciate those of you that came back into the room that didn't have somebody. But this is just an opportunity or a game that we can use to hear from somebody and try to get to the heart of what's in there. And so often we hear from families, you know, that they're ranting, they're asking for something. And the example I'm going to use is like a parent comes into an IEP meeting and says, I want 60 minutes of speech therapy every day for my kid. And we all know that that's just unreasonable, right? There's many reasons why that's unreasonable, but the parent wants it. But so we need to get to the heart of the why. Why do they want it? And if I use my kid as an example of my deaf kid, communication was really important to us. So if I went in saying, I want him to have 60 minutes every day of speech therapy, and the school's like, no, that's just not going to happen. That would just shut me down. But instead they could say, you know, Amanda, that's just not going to be very helpful to him because he'd miss so much of his day. He'd miss opportunities to communicate with his peers. And then let's try, how about we try this, right? So we could do push in, and the speech path could come into the classroom, the playground, the cafeteria, the resource room, and then think about when she does pull them out for maybe 20 minutes once or twice a week, that they're knowing what to talk about, and also working with the teacher. Hey, here's some things that I saw. Can you pull the students in? Because peer-to-peer is really important. So if you can explain then and understand where the parent's coming from, and then explain, here's some other ideas of how we can help your kiddo. Let's try this first, would really alleviate maybe some of that stress and worry that the family has, and why that they're asking for something that might just be way out, way out in left field there. All right, so moving on to number 3 here is supporting students through family strengthening and protective factors. All right, so for family strengthening and protective factors, we want families to be strong, right? But we don't always want them to be too strong. And I can tell you that I was that mom a lot of years. I wasn't always, but I was often that mom because I spoke up, I advocated, I asked for things that sometimes were not appropriate for my kiddo at that time. But I had a good team that helped me to sometimes bring me back down. But we have to be that mom. Who else is going to do it for our kiddos? So we hope that you give a little grace to families who we're trying to strengthen them, or trying to raise them up and be that advocate, and also be our partners. So there are protective factors for families that we can do to help strengthen them. One of them is parental resilience. So if they're like, oh, I'm done, how do we help them get back on the right track? It was a teacher for me. When I felt really overwhelmed and sort of done with the system in 6th grade, it was a teacher who raised me back up and brought my resilience back, and kind of re-infused me so that I could be a better advocate for my kiddo. We need social connections, not only with each other, because parent to parent is probably one of the most important things I ever had as growing up with my kiddo, but we need social connections to other advocacy groups and support groups. We need to know about how our kids are developing. I didn't go to school to be a child developmental specialist. I'm just doing the best that I can. So we want to know how my kid is developing against their gen ed peers, and also against kids that are similar to them. For concrete support in times of need, if families are in crisis, they cannot partner. When families are in crisis, they can barely manage day to day. So if you see somebody that's really struggling, maybe they have food insecurity and you know that there's going to be a food drop, throw a flyer into their backpack or everybody's backpack if you don't want to call them out. But we can't be good advocates and we can't be good partners if we're in crisis. And then also social and emotional competence in children. Like I don't know about these things. So help me understand how my child is developing, again, against general ed and as well as his peers in special ed, so that I can work on things at home. If you teach me these things, then I can do them and be your partner together. And this is just a quick slide. You guys will have access again. And if you want a PDF, we can send it to you, but you can see it on the SCED app. Just some more protective family strengthening opportunities. Okay, and Susan's going to talk about this one.
And before I do, I'll just acknowledge that I left a link in the chat. Here it is. Amanda was talking about other agencies that can help families. This is an infographic that we created, and it has been blessed by your leadership. But it's a wonderful thing to give to families, all families, because then if they need a resource, they've got it handy. And all of these agencies believe in partnership. They're not into going straight to due process. So we encourage you to refer families to these 6 agencies if appropriate. Now, what we're going into now is an infographic that was created 15 years ago or more. It was after reading a book by a parent of a child with a disability. Her name was Helen Featherstone, and she brought in lots of other families sharing their ideas. And it boiled down to coming up with 4 things that families really wanted from professionals. They wanted information, they wanted emotional support, respect, and most of all, they wanted access to services for their children. And we got together the family serving agencies so that we could think about how we could put this information out to other families and to professionals to let them know what would make for partnership. And we realized there was one element that was missing, and that was the element of hope. And we all know in our own lives, if somebody doesn't give you a sense of a hopeful future for your child, it's devastating. So adding that is so important. And the thing that takes it away often are those 3-year re-evals, because as much as we say they should be strength-based, often they are not. My son's 3-year re-evals made him look like a slug. And he has a lot of charming, wonderful qualities. But we wanted to put this, we're not going to go through each element with you because it's in the handout. We wanted you to see this. It can be handed out to parents and or professionals. And the underlying message is listening. You can see the ear there. The greatest thing you can do for a family is just to listen. And that will solve so many problems down the road you don't even know. It's when families don't feel heard that they sometimes get backed into a corner. Go ahead, Amanda. You can just kind of advance through these next slides.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my little mousey wasn't right on that button. There we go. And so in addition to the I hear strategies, there are marathon skills that were that came up with by Ann Turnbull several years ago that Spin has adopted. And we share these with families because we think it's important for them to kind of build up their own parenting skills or thinking about how they're parenting to their kiddo. And we tell them that, raising a child with a disability is not a sprint to the finish, it's a marathon because it goes on well past school as well. And speaking of marathon, we want to do a shameless plug here for our SPIN conference that's coming up on April the 22nd. It's on a Saturday. And we do know that schools will pay for your registration if you ask them. And if not your school, to ask your district to see if you can get help with that. But we invite you to come. It's going to be in person at UH Manoa. We will have really fabulous workshops, resource room, an awards ceremony. Do you remember that picture at the beginning? We're going to recognize parents and professionals and teachers and aides that are doing the good work in the community. And if you choose or don't want to come in person, or maybe you're in Neighbor Island and don't want to fly over, we are offering a virtual opportunity to access the live workshops where you can then ask a question on Zoom. We'll have a monitor that can ask that of the presenter. So we do have that going on this year as well. So please mark your calendars, let your families know, and also let each other know. We would love to have you, because SPIN is a partnership conference between families and professionals.
And I want to add that we have parent airfare scholarships. If you are a Neighbor Island teacher and you can find some families that want to come to Oahu, we can pay for their airfare. Most of them stay with families while they're here, or they come back on the same day. But it's first come, first serve. So if you think of some families that would appreciate the conference because it's really warm and fuzzy and informative, please have them get in touch with SPIN right away.
Absolutely. Thanks, Susan. Okay, our next one here is standard 4. This is speaking up for every child. I love this one. Dear IEP members, the other word for pain in the ass parent is advocate. It sometimes feels that way, right? That we feel like we're both wanting the same, or we're both wanting good things for the kiddos, but sometimes we come at it from a different way. So speaking up for every child, that we're empowered to be advocates for every child, and not only our own child, right? Gen Ed families get to speak up for all of the kids in the school. SPED families, like, well, you can only advocate for your kiddo, Amanda, not for other kids. But standard 4 in our Hawaii Board of Education says, I can be empowered to speak up for all kiddos. Now, these slides, I want to breeze through these because there's some at the end that we really want to get to today. But these really are geared towards the families, because we want families to know it's okay to be an advocate. It's okay to partner and speak up for what you need. And that advocating really just means to speak up. But these also are for professionals, for teachers, for EAs, for admins, that it is okay to speak up and to talk story. If you're getting stonewalled somewhere, who is that trusted person? Could you ask an RT at the district level for something that you might have an idea about? Helping share with families, some way for them to record information and get it back to you. To find that person that you trust, to ask questions as needed. We encourage families, especially young families. The preschool families are really at a disadvantage. They don't know about IDEA. They don't know about the IEP process. So we really want them to ask as many questions as they need, and to know that it's okay to show emotions. You might sit in an IEP meeting and the parent is in tears, and think about that activity we did. Why were they in tears? It's hurtful sometimes, as Susan said, when people are telling you what your kid can't do, what they'll not do, it's hard, and it hurts our heart. And so sometimes that hurt heart comes out in tears shed. But we don't want them, parents or professionals, to be mean or rude or disrespectful to each other. But knowing that sometimes that emotion does come out. And if you can think of a time when parent advocacy was positive and a good thing for a student, please do drop that in the chat and share with everybody, and let us know when, there was a time when a parent was kind of a pain, but it did work out in the end for the student, or gosh, they did have a good suggestion that worked out not only for their own, but other students. And then also think about times when parents were advocating, too much, or it seemed unreasonable, that request. And we go back to that why. Why are they asking? What do they care about? What is that fear that they have? What mattered to that family? What is the why behind the ask, even if it seems really unreasonable or too much? And I think that could really help a lot of us get past some of these barriers that we have put up together.
And Amanda, I was just going to add right there that for preschool families transitioning in from early intervention, they've left a system that is family-centered. They're going to a system that is child-focused. And that alone sometimes can make families wary of what DOE is. We try to bridge that knowledge barrier. And we also are having a conference workshop on SPED 101, because families don't even know what's on the menu. They feel if they find out about a service in year 2, they're going to think that you intentionally withheld that information, which is not true at all. But families need to know what their options are. And with information, they can really do a much better job of advocating.
Okay. And I love this little slide, you know, that you must be Timmy's dad. I'm Timmy's teacher. They are equal partners in trying to educate little Timmy. It's giving them both a little frazzles there. Okay, and we put this slide here and not in our lens or bias slide. We put it here as we start to talk about partnerships, because we do see the world through a different lens. If you're coming in from that parent side, or you're coming in from the teacher, professional, EA, admin side, we are looking at this child with different lenses, but they're both correct. And they're both equal in value, right? That we come from, this is my life, this is personal, so this is my job, this is where I work, that I didn't plan for this, or I went to school for this. But we really, when we get to the bottom, it's like we all want to do the best that we can for the student. And sometimes for families, it's like, I want to do better, but I don't know how to do better, or I don't have the time, or I'm really burnt out. We see that a lot in high school families. They're just so tired by that time that they're burnt out, and we need to try to re-engage them. And sometimes teachers feel like, I want to help you and I don't feel like you're letting me help you. So we need to come together through these lenses and see where the other person is standing so that we can stand together in partnership.
Amanda,
Yeah.
I just wanted to comment on a wonderful input in the chat from Doris, who says that she doesn't think parent input is ever too much, and that even though she has 100 kids to keep track of, having a parent be a squeaky wheel helps focus her attention. And that is a very generous attitude. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you so much.
We try to point out to families that a principal, for instance, has 600 kids or more that they're concerned about, but that doesn't mean the family doesn't need to advocate for their own child.
Yep. Sometimes that squeaky wheel is going to make a difference, not only for their own kids, but for several kids coming up behind them. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Doris. Okay, so we're going to roll into our end here about talking about partnerships and how we're treating families as equal partners in the education. We always think about that in the IEP, like you are an equal partner, but sometimes I sit in an IEP meeting and there's 15 people at the table, which means my equal piece is 1/15. Right? It's not half equal. It's 1/15 equal. So when we're talking like we're going to treat you as an equal, sometimes that doesn't look equal when we're the only parents sitting in a big room of professionals who have a lot more experience than I do. This one down here, I just want to call out this: don't make parents wait outside the conference room before the IEP meeting. This is a personal experience I've had, and a lot of families have. We come with our binders. I used to bring chocolate, and fruit for after school meetings. And I'd come to the front office and they'd finally look up at me and they'd say, yes, hi, I'm Amanda Kaahanui. I'm here for the 2:00 IEP meeting. Please have a seat. And then I would watch all of the IEP team members go into the conference room because they would go in from the back area, right? And my little brain would start to mess with me because my little conspiracy brain would say, what are they talking about in there? Are they predetermining my kids, IEP? What's happening? Are they talking about me? What's happening in there? Because I'm not in the room, I don't know. Now, what's probably happening is they're talking about how freaking hot it was on the playground today because it was a hot day, right? Or, oh my gosh, I've got to grade all these papers. They're probably talking about things that don't even pertain to my kid or my family, but I'm not there, so I don't know. So I did talk to the principal of the school, and we did make the arrangement that when I come in, no more than 15 minutes prior to the meeting, I could go in and set up, because that was the other thing. They would call me and say, we're ready for you, Mrs. Kaahanui, and it's 2:00 or 3:00, whatever it was. I've got to put my binder down. I've got to get my notes out. I'm putting the chocolate out on the table. And meanwhile, people are looking at me like, well, why aren't you ready for this meeting that started 3 minutes ago? Like they're all staring at you. It's just very nerve-wracking. So if we are waiting in the waiting room for our IEP meeting, I don't feel like an equal partner. I feel like a guest speaker that's coming in to speak to the team. So just want to, that's my one point in there that I want to pull out of that slide.
Amanda,
Yeah.
you and I were just talking yesterday about a policy that we heard about, that IEP meetings are always at 7 a.m. Is that true? Because that's not partnering with families. It's not necessarily a mutually agreeable time. I realize you folks have a hectic schedule, but there has to be a choice. We just wanted to put our 2 cents in on that.
Yeah, Kira says not at her school, and I'm really glad to hear that, Kira, but we are hearing that more and more. It just seems to be becoming a trend that's happening. Like, yeah, 7 to 8, you only get 1 hour and that's it. So and it's really hard to even get through the plep in an hour, right? And then you got to kind of start all over again. So really glad to see that that's not happening at all of the schools. Really pleased to see that.
Oh, thanks for giving us that feedback. It
Yeah.
makes us more hopeful.
It does, yeah. Because sometimes we only see that one side, right? That one perspective. And it's really helpful for us to see and hear from you folks about what's going on all over the state and not just at certain places. Okay, on this slide, it's like the don't take things personally, be the duck. So remember that families may have had their own issues before they got to you, or another state even, not even within our school system here, or something that happened to them personally as a child going up to the school. So things just could be happening to them. Maybe they're stressed out. Maybe their partner has COVID and is now in a weird room in the house. Maybe they just lost their job. Maybe somebody passed away. Things are happening with families. Things are happening with us as professionals. So if we get yelled at, if we get, we feel dumped on, try not to take it personally, because it's probably not personal. It's just a way for that family to just, and you may be the only person at that school that they have interactions with or talk to. And so if they're frustrated about the drop-off situation at school and you're the only person that they see at school, they're going to tell you, and they may just be frustrated. So be the duck if you can, and try not to take it too personal. We also want to remind folks to believe in my kiddo. And I know we're preaching to the choir here, Susan and I, but that plep is really depressing. Those triannual, evaluations can be really depressing for us and for our kids. And so give us something to look forward to. Aim high. Think about all of the things that they can do, and then try to share that with us. As I mentioned earlier, I got to 6th grade and I felt so tired, run down, beat down, going to meetings and just hearing all the things that weren't going to happen or couldn't happen for various reasons. And it was a teacher who helped raise me back up and said, let's get this kid in an inclusion setting. I believe in him. And that started his journey to graduation. If we wouldn't have done that, he probably wouldn't have graduated. And it was a teacher who helped me to get there. So if you believe in my kid, you're going to help me re-believe in my kid, because sometimes we lose our way too. And also to tell parents good things that happen at the school, right? So if the kid got a good grade on the test, if they did something that was positive from their IEP goal, give a quick text, give a quick email, let us know, because if you only call us or contact us when it's bad things, or when there's something happened at the school, oh gosh, what happened again today? I don't want to pick up the phone when you call. I'm just going to let it go to a to voicemail, or I'm not going to read the email, because it's just more bad news. So you got to give me a little positive behavior support and throw some good things in there, because then I'm going to want to be more together with you. I'm going to want to partner more if you believe in my kid the way I do. We also want to think about preparing our parents for the IEP, that you don't have to wait for the annual to talk about how the kid is struggling or how they're improving. And also preparation looks like sharing test scores. I've gone to meetings and I get like the whole year's test scores in the IEP meeting. It's like, well, where was this in October? Where was this in January? Why are we talking about this now in April or May? So share throughout the year how the kid is doing, because then you can make maybe small edits to a goal or think about new strategies, and let folks know that they also can contribute to those goals. So you don't have to wait for the annual to have that big reveal of all the stuff that's in there. Prepare your parents. And think about the IEP as a shared document. right? So if you can't, and we know that you guys are overloaded. We totally, we get that. And so we hope that you also can think about trying to start that process early, working with your families, trying to get the draft to them early. Because I tell you, I've been in meetings where they go, here is the copy of your draft IEP, Mrs. Kaahanui. What are your comments? Like, I haven't even read it. And it's a waste of time to sit for 10 minutes in an IEP meeting to read through a draft that I could have gotten a couple days ago if possible. We know that that doesn't always happen because you're rushing as well, but if you can, try to give them even pieces of it. We got to the end when my son was graduating, we got to a point when the teacher, the care coordinator would say, here's the goals that we're talking about. And I'd say, well, how about we talk about this one? I could then work directly with the speech path and say, here's what we're talking about here. And she would agree. Those would get inputted. And so by the time we actually got to the IEP meeting, I agreed with all the goals. We had talked about them already. We had talked about modifications and accommodations, and all we had to do was kind of go through the plep and then kind of go, yep, agree, and then get to the minutes in that part of the IEP. And so it was a lot smoother because we already, all of us had an understanding of what was coming on. Come on, clicky, clicky. There we go. All right. So we want to make sure we have time to engage with you guys, to ask you about some tips that worked for you. Because this is not just us telling you, but we want you to also share with each other. You know, what did you do that worked for family engagement or partnership? And let us know in the chat or unmute and let us know what you did. Do you guys have ideas? What did you do?
And Amanda, I want to acknowledge some of the comments in the chat. One was about how many meetings they have. And we want you to know that we are systems advocates for you as well as for families. And we voted in SEAC for the pay differential. And we voted for you getting your expense money back. And we voted for teacher housing because we know how tough it is for you. So if there's any way that we can support your efforts, let us know, because family serving organizations are really interested in supporting your profession as well.
Right, because when you do good, our kids do good, right? And if it's challenging and hard for you and you're having a challenging and hard day or stressful day or can't get to stuff, we do want to help alleviate some of that or help find a way that makes it easier and better for you too, because then you're going to have a better experience, you're going to be a happier teacher, and our kids are going to learn more. So thank you for we really appreciate the comments in the chat as well. That's really important to us. So does anybody have ideas or things that worked for your school? Oh, honey, Tammy says, I'm just an EA. Oh, sweetheart, you are not just an EA. That's like saying I'm just a parent. EAs work with our kids one-to-one every day, right? And you are moving with our kids from class to class. You're going to the PE together or music together. And often it's the EAs that are doing the goal work on the IEP, right? They're sitting with these kids every day. So bless you. You are not just an EA. You are a very important part of our team. And it's something that we have been trying to advocate for as well, is allowing EAs to come to IEP meetings because you have a lot to share. And if you can't get to that IEP meeting, talk to your teachers, strike up a conversation with parents, because they want to be knowing from you also what's going on at school. So parents and EAs can form really strong bonds. We had some really strong bonds with our EAs because they were the ones every day working with the kiddos one-to-one.
I don't know how to raise my hand.
Go ahead, Cicely. Yeah.
There's no raise my hand option on here, so I'm really sorry, but I can put it in the chat if you want me to wait.
No, speak up.
Nope.
Speak up, Cecily.
I'm going to stop share here.
Appreciate you guys so much. You guys are pretty freaking amazing. So I've been a SPED teacher for over 28 years, and not here in the DOE, but there are so many amazing teachers out there, which is why I stay. It's certainly not because of my admin, but it's mostly because of my kids and my parents that I stay, because I just love them. And they just want to be heard. And if they're crying or they're angry or they're screaming, it's because they're afraid. So, because I've been on both sides of this table. But yeah, if you want to advocate for us, I don't know if you've seen the most recent things that HSTA is proposing, but they're proposing less caseload, which would really be helpful. We're not getting time in our day. So my biggest gripe, no offense to complain, because I really, really do love my kids, but I work 60 hours a week and I get yelled at from principals who go, well, your job is to modify. I'm like, I'm working with kids. I'm writing IEPs. I'm doing paperwork. I'm contacting parents. I'm doing the best I can to modify, and that's your job. That's what they tell me. I'm like, but I'm doing like 5 jobs. Like, really? And the fact that you get yelled at for something rather than, gosh, good job on everything you're doing. You have a great connection with your parents. Our parents love you. It's like, nope. So I don't know if you can put that in the contract that you should get like kudos or something. Because we're certainly not getting enough pay. Because I thought, $10,000 more for differential. Thank you for voting for that. But I put in 1.5%. I put in 60 hours. That 10,000 more is not enough differential for my job and a half that I actually spend time there. And I still don't do it. I can't do it all at work, do it at home. And it's like, it's never enough. So
That's
my
absolutely true, Cecily. And it's true for high school gen ed science teachers. It's true for all teachers, really, that they put in more time. The problem with special education is you have so much paperwork and it drowns you in all those requirements. And it's so technical. You have to get it just right because of the legality of it. And HSTA has been a wonderful advocate trying to get those monies and those time constraints acknowledged. But, right now we're in a good spot financially. I hope some of this can go through. They finally started to acknowledge teachers who've been in the system for a long time who don't fall into those differential categories, but who haven't gotten a raise in 10 years or 20 years. So we all have to raise the status of teachers up in society and pay them better. Yeah.
And think about, how do we relieve some of that for you? Right. So we've heard of some teachers that can work with their admin and get a part-time person to come in and do some of that paperwork filing, or the data. Oh my gosh, the mounds and mounds of data that you have to do for every single kid, right? And then trying to transfer that into. So maybe ask them, or see if there's district help that can come down and provide some support as you're preparing for IEP season coming in, just so you can get time away from having to do those modifications or changing to get some of your paperwork done. We've heard some schools have been able to get some of that, or working with their district to get RTs to come down and help support them. But we will keep fighting for you guys, because we know how much extra time you put in.
I see a comment, Amanda, from Christy Araki about how she utilizes you as a parent trainer, but she didn't mention that we're going to utilize her at the SPIN conference, because what we do at the SPIN conference is we model partnership by having professionals and parents and or persons with disabilities co-present together, because then you hear both sides of it. It really enriches the audience to hear both perspectives.
Yeah.
So thank you for being available, Christy.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. So I just jump in here one more time, because on my Facebook group that I have, my daughter, who is 26 and amazing, she has Asperger's as well as my son, and she's going to do a question answer talk story time with me, and I'm inviting all the parents on my Facebook group to just join in, either ask questions or just participate, because you get that modeling, that role modeling of how to make connections with your kid. It's invaluable. It's like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. So that's helpful.
Yeah. And we don't get that other places.
Really, I mean, my idols are all persons with disabilities who have shared their voice. And my son is nonverbal, and I have to intuit what he wants, but he's shared his opinion many times, and I try to get others to see what his preferences are, because he's the ultimate customer,
And Doris had put a comment in that said they have parent night with free dinners. feeding by
Yay.
local grinds and things, which is
Wow.
awesome. But she said they get low numbers, but then whole families come out. And so I would say like, oh, can you ask the families then at your school, like, what else, what do they want, a little training that goes along with that? Do they want an activity that could go along with that? Like, have you asked the families what would make it more enticing for them to come, right? We've so long been like, school is school and it's just for the kids, right? Home is home and that's just for the families and the kids. But we're trying to sort of bring them together a little bit more and have schools be a place where I can learn about how to teach my kid. And if I can learn how to teach my kid, then he's going to do better when he gets to you at school. And if I can help him with his homework or reading assignment or whatever that might be, because I understand it better, then they're going to be better in school. So I would say reach out, to, ask for a survey and see what families like a parent night. But food is always a good one. It usually brings families out, especially if mom doesn't have to cook after working all day. It's a good one. All right, well, we just have a few more minutes. If you'd like to unmute and share some parenting or partnering opportunities that you've done, we appreciate that feedback, or pop something in the chat. Also want to make sure you get credit for being here today. So be sure and put your name and your school, and if you can, just what you do at your school in the chat, because we're going to share the chat back with the DOE so that they can see that you were here and you get full credit, because we don't have this is our sign-in sheet as our chat, as I'm pointing to the chat on the side.
I wanted to share, this is Tammy. I wanted to share that at our school, we have where their name goes into a drawing every time they come to a workshop or any PCN, any parent thing. And at the end of the year, there's a drawing. So, all these
Alright.
parents, their kids are telling them to come because they want their name in there. And food is definitely a yes. Like what I'm trying to do, I'm not the PCNC anymore. I'm an EA, but I mentioned, and I'm also on the council and committee. I don't think I'm as a parent because I don't have kids there, but I'm as a staff. But I want to bring back my make a date with your child. And it was always on Valentine's Day. And
Oh,
some parents, they would have to buy a school lunch, but some parents would come every day because they miss school lunches. They would look at the menu and then decide, okay, I'm going to come this day, then I'm going to come this day. But that really worked. But
It's nostalgic, right?
yeah, I want to
that
bring it
school
back.
lunch. Awesome.
That's
I love
nice.
it.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yep.
I want to bring it back.
And I love Christy said partner with local food vendors. So there's that standard 6, right? Working with our communities. Community organizations want to support schools, that they often don't know how. And they often get rebuffed sometimes when they do try to come in. So definitely work with local organizations. Ask families who are at your school if they've got connections, either with their own company or others. They might, oh, my uncle works for this company, and they will want to reach out and help. It'll make them feel good. They might get a tax break for it, but it will start working towards those partnerships. Because sometimes it's just a little slow moving, stone with moss on it, but it takes time for it to keep rolling down the hill. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We really, really appreciate your dialogue with us and conversations with us today, and your partnership with us today. We appreciate you allowing us as parents to come and talk to you about parent partnerships with school. And hope that this made it a little less, sometimes it's scary to think about parents as partners. So we hope that we've also helped not feel so scary. So don't forget, put your name in the chat so you get recorded and counted for today. And please think about Spin Conference. Come and join us, share with your families, come together with your families. That's always a fun thing to do. And we hope to see you at the Spin Conference. And thank you so much. Susan, parting words?
Well, you're all awesome. You're what keeps our kids going. And I wouldn't be where I am today with my son and my thinking about him had it not been all the teachers that helped him.
Yeah.
And he went from fully self-contained to inclusive education, back to semi self-contained. But once you've tasted inclusion, there's no going back in your mind. So I appreciate you all for trying to promote that for kids. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a great day. Don't forget to take a lunch and then go back in for the keynote. I don't know if it's going to be the same guy, but if they had Benjamin Chu on Tuesday and he was
Oh,
amazing.
he was fabulous.
Oh,
Yeah,
bring
he's our favorite presenter.
bring tissue because you might need it because he's really that amazing. So don't forget the keynote after lunch, and then there's one more workshop after this. Okay, you guys have a great day. Thank you.
Bye.